Okay, so good afternoon, or good morning, but almost good afternoon, and welcome to this last part of this morning on the course of Strengthening European Identity Through Culture and Education and How to Manage It. We come back to Professor Mario Neve, Professor at the Department of Cultural Heritage at the Ravenna campus in Bologna, who is going to continue his presentation from this morning, giving a few topics that can hit the room a little bit for debate, and maybe answering some of the questions that were pending this morning. So we have now 1 hour with him. He will be continuing after the lunch break. So we will continue with the discussion and after the lunch break. So the idea is that now he's going to give some topics on his subject. And let's think about that during also lunchtime, and we'll discuss it after lunchtime, because I think it's good to discuss after lunchtime. Okay? So, Professor Neve, thank you very much again, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. The idea is basically I try to, you know, the nature is untamed nature. So the idea was to, I tried to, in a sense, tailor the second part on the grounds of what the questions you posed before. So I tried to just elaborate a bit on a couple of questions. One is the divide between knowledge and practices, which is a very big question. And the second one is the usages of the cultural heritage. So two kinds of questions. One is also tied to the role of the social media, just a bit, because today is very much advertised as a place for democracy, for direct democracy. And I want to just elaborate a bit on this, on the basis of a book of Cass Sunstein. It was his constitutionalist, an American constitutionalist. He wrote a quite good book about this. So let's go to the okay. So we okay, we have to go after through all these things. Sorry, but I prepared it, but it's okay. It's my fault. Sorry. I'll be quick as soon as able. Okay. Okay. We were, okay. You remember the question of the uses of nature, now the way we talk about nature and how this became a standard. No, but this is important because we really generated two kinds of nature, but also we always forgot the thing I said, you remember at outset, the difference between what happens in the models and what happens in reality, in real life. So this is a good example because normally we think on the so-called planar model on 2 dimensions, that things are going linearly. So the increase of one element, you have the other increase of the other element. And it's, normally, in real life, it doesn't happen. For example, you expect to have a linear increase of altitude and corresponding diminishing of temperature, and you know that you can go hiking up a mountain and finding progressively kind of climates, just like you're approaching the North Pole, no? So while going to the north. The fact is that these things happen linearly. You should see the disappearance of the forest gradually. Instead, it's not like that, because the forest is whole, is a being, is something, is a complex system, so it behaves like a whole. It disappears all of a sudden. The upper limit is like something that is no more viable. So it's very hard to find some isolated trees. So the forest is really a complex system, so it behaves like all complex systems. We are also, as a society, a complex system. So we have to always consider the different dimensions in which we live. And so another thing is what I said, the knowledge practices divide. What is? Does it mean? This is the model of a smart city followed by a report from many European universities led by Vienna. And this is the basic definition of a smart city followed by the European Commission. And you see that any part of urban life is divided into blocks. No? Yes, they say they are connected, but they are grouped and sorted out this way with different quantitative indicators for each. And from all this should arise the smart city. Okay? But why we think that when we have to manage life, the best thing is to slice life into different parts and managing each of them differently? Why? It's what we call analysis generally, no? So slicing, no? Dividing parts. It's not an irrational way of thinking, absolutely not. It's also effective in many things. But remember, when you talk about social life, it's a very slippery object. Okay? And Barth said this. So we are at odds in dealing with social worlds just from the quantitative point of view. But why we think that this is really the only way? Huh? There's a reason. There's a reason because all these questions belongs to a very long story. It was, you remember, the traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge is what made all the European landscapes we know. Even this, okay? And remember the cities and towns from Middle Ages, and above all, some famous buildings like this, the Chartres Cathedral. This is very, okay, these are just very different from this one. Why are so different? You know why? Because here there is already the divide between knowledge and practices. To build Chartres on a span of 16, 17 years, there worked more than 200 people. There was no architect. It was a collective work, like, for example, Santa Maria del Mar in Barcelona, or many other churches or buildings. There are collective works, the Duomo of Modena, there are a lot of works of this kind. Why? Why wasn't, no, there people, we are convinced that there were always, no, architects thinking, designing. It's not true. It was collective work. And people coming from all Europe, because they were specialized. The craftsmen, for example, working on the staining windows, coming from England, they were specializing, and they already worked, for example, in the Basilica of Assisi. And other craftsmen coming from Spain, coming from France, from it, even the first Tour de France, we think of biking now, no? But the first Tour de France was the Masons, the Freemasons. It was called Tour de France because to complete apprenticeship, they had to travel around, yes, around all the towns. They were affiliated to the, for example, to the Masons or other kind of craftsmanship to complete. Because, yes, you have to learn by doing, because it was, the workshop was learning by doing. It wasn't someone saying you have to read before a textbook and then you do. You have to imitate and find your style. And all the great artists we know were in a workshop. Raffaello, Leonardo, Michelangelo, a lot. And you know, before the 17th century, they weren't artists at all. They called them artisans. You know why? Because artist was invented by Vasari, was the historian of art inventing the idea that was the artist. The same thing happened to musicians. Bach, he wasn't thinking about him as an artist. He worked every day from dawn to sunset. And then he go to the coffee house to lead a beautiful band to play all together. Was something part of his life. Is Mozart the difference? When you find Mozart is the difference. He's becoming the artist, rebelling, no? Toward the Archbishop of Salzburg, saying, no, I'm an artist, I'm a genius. Michelangelo was very cautious in saying this thing to Giulio II. He was also not just a pope, but also an army man, so it was big, blunt. Wasn't it? They were just people working. The contracts, you today stay on the art market, no? And how can we evaluate the work of art? Because of demand and offer. But you know where the contracts for Filippino Lippi or for other artists, huh? But how they were paid? There are the contracts. Just saying, he had to use these materials, and it is all details of the materials, which the prices, and how big is the painting, and this is the materials used and how a work finished. No genius, no creativity, nothing at all. They thought about them as artisans. This is very important, because they belonged still to a world in which the idea of knowledge was something inside the practices, not separated from them. The first one is Brunelleschi. He is a son. He is a son of a mason. But he's different. He studied Perspectiva, he studied with the humanists. So he designed this. And he doesn't rely on masons. The masons have to follow his design, his drawings, literally. So just you say, had to do this, and then this, finished. No creativity, no personal contribution to the work. No, yet just to work, finished. There is the architect imagining in advance, designing, and then keep masons working. This is a big change. This is the first factory work. This is already industry. There's a separation between the labor, no, and the design, the creativity. Right, today we think about creative classes, no? Advertisers, architects, designers. Why? Creativity is part of any moment of life. To be democratic means to be really creative. How to run a discussion or a dialogue without creativity? It's impossible. Creativity is not something just belonging to, one activity. It's part of any mind. The problem is you want to use it or not. I don't know if this is quite clear. So this divide between knowledge and practices was really, yes, of course, we had the scientific revolution because of this, of course. The growth of theory. And with the growth of theory, the industrial revolution, technological revolution, of course. But you always have the one designing and thinking, the other one working. Separated. But you remember, this is a very important thing. Any practice, to be meaningful, to work, needs time. The old apprenticeship was based on the fact that you work a lot together with the others. Of course, you made mistakes. You learn from these mistakes and discuss with the others. And all this social stuff is very important to your advancement of learning. This is the reason of the Tour de France. Different towns, different people, different way of learning and talking. This is a great part of this kind of learning. And you cannot separate the theory from the practice. It's impossible. I don't know if this is quite clear. Another thing is why the cultural heritage is materially important also. Right? Remember I said why cultural heritage sites or places are important in themselves, not just for an aesthetic or from an aesthetic point of view, but also because they tell us a lot of things about the territory we live in. This is an old book of the 50s of a geologist. I was a geologist with a passion for art history. He was able to find for any Italian town in the historic centers the origin of the building materials. This is a map just for the northern Italy, and you see, for example, that Bologna had the building materials coming from Veneto, from Friuli. So, okay, you say, okay, they were related. Then, so, no, it's important because this means not just the fact that you can elaborate on the old historical relationships between these regions. It's not just this, but also because all materials have a symbolic meaning. Oh, this is a very hard question, because when you talk about symbolism, it's always hard to talk about symbols, because symbols are also related to the famous pasts that never existed. No? It is true. And I want to underline this because this is part of what Bart said and what Stevie said about, remember, the two pasts you have to cope with. This is this. The official past often is presented like a past that never existed. So it's, to find a way to cope with this is not easy. I show you just an example, okay, of the importance of material. Do you know this town? This is Bologna. It's a historic center, okay? These are the portici of Bologna. The porches, they are very common in historic centers. The reason why, because they were the enlargement of the volumes of the houses without not occupying the soil, the public soil, so stay above the street, and providing, of course, a shelter. But the most important thing is the colors. Look at the colors. Red, ochre, all the historic center is like this, all. And you remember it's a medieval center, okay? This is another quite close city, which is Florence. White, all white, or very pale gray, but really white. Why? It's a chance, it's just an aesthetic choice? No, it's a political choice, because aesthetical choices are almost always political. Political in the sense of a choice of a community. It's the highest sense of the term political. It's not just run by politicians, but when a community recognizes itself in something, okay? Look at this. Okay, look, why you have this kind of color? It doesn't remind something to you? The countryside. These are the colors of the countryside. The soil. All these colors are taken from there. And all the towns belonging to all the contado of Bologna are with these colors. Instead, it's different for Florence. Why? Because Florence wasn't, like Bologna, a hub of the regional network. Was the master of the network of the Tuscan cities. So Florence exported the white, while Bologna acquired the colors of the countryside. It's the opposite, because different roles, different colors, different symbols. And you find a lot of documents at the time recognizing this, acknowledging this. So it's not just, an interpretation of art history. It's something really political. And, of course, there's another question. You know what is this? This is the first medieval town hall in Anagni, built by the Pope to support the communes against the emperor. Remember all the quarrel, no? So the free communes, okay? Don't worry, I'm not with Salvini, so No, you know, today talking about league is something, but this is historical fact. What is the real importance of this? The real importance of this is that you find this pattern all around Europe. You know that Europe is the only part of the world in which you have the public square connected to the town hall, always. You cannot find this in Chinese cities, in Arabic cities. They said, no. The public square, normally with a political role, connected to the town hall, is a European feature, typically. Okay? Of course, you can find different situations. You can find different perspectives. In Bologna, you find, for example, the notaries, you know, the building of notaries. Why? Because the notaries were the guarantee to the citizenship. Because they had all the contracts about housing, about real estate, basically. And they invented also the addresses. Name of the street, civic number. Was an invention by the notaries. So this is a question, but you find different kind of places, of squares. But all these squares around all the Europe, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, it doesn't matter. It's always the same role and the same importance. In Paris, you know, it's easy, but anywhere, really anywhere, you can find it. So, this means that all this heritage is not just an aesthetic or a tourism attraction, no? Because when you go to a Renaissance city like Urbino, what happens? Disappears the square, because the square is communal. So, what does Federico da Montefeltro? He built a palace in which he has the facade towards the exterior part is like a fortress, but inside, the square disappears because it becomes the courtyard of the palace itself. The seigneuries are no more communal. They changed. So no more the communal democracy, but it's the prince. So you see everything. You have always public places related, no, in the cultural heritage, related always to this political, social changes. And any historical and aesthetical figure, or feature, sorry, is tied to these changes. Now, a little jump, the final part. I know that now, yes, we are in very decreasing of strength, attention, so I try to be very fast. But another question, it seems very far from this. Remember social media? We talked about social media and democracy, no? And I told that they are normally dealt with a bit superficially. But I had no time to elaborate on. And just a thing on this. I don't know if you know this author who wrote Democracy 2.0. He's a constitutionalist from United States. And he makes a point on this. Why? Because he says, okay, to have a real democracy, you need two things. the unexpected. The people should be exposed to unexpected situations. Remember the conflict. So you have to be open, not just in discussing things on which we already agreed, or you know that there's not an opposition or a possible conflict. But you should be open to the unexpected, with what happens, to be, accepting what really happens in the discussion. And second, you have to share experiences. And experiences cannot be shared on social media. You know why? Because the search engines filter what you are searching for. This is an example. You have the same query, 2 different results from Google. Because you know that the work of Google, or like any search engine, is not just to find what you are searching for, but to reinforce your affiliation to the search engine. You know why you find the first lines, the first queries you find. You know, the algorithm in Google is based on the fact that the first in the list are the ones with more links to them. This is a classic power law saying that the rich getting riches. Always, 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 always. But this doesn't mean that this is really the best link to that information. And it is nice because Jon Elster is a social scientist. He said, it's the paradox of the fox. Remember the fox and the grapes? Saying that, she's not able to reach them. I say, no, but I didn't want to have the grapes. It seems just a joke, but this means that, and this is a very typical behavior, people are socially adaptive. When you reduce the options, they stay. They don't try to go outside and try to find other options, alternative. They are used to stay content with the situations. Not to admit they are at odds with the situation. In fact, if you have limited options, like it happens on the media, you are not trying to find alternative voices or saying, okay, I'm not saying, this is the effect of fake news is just this. Why they are so successful, no? Because this. So, this means that not only you cannot have really a direct democracy on the social media, because they are not run by people, actually. And don't forget, they are run by private companies. So, you cannot have an objective world in which you can, move like it's just a public, open discussion. At the same time, this should reinforce the idea that the face-to-face dialogue, even when it's a confrontation, is better than this, very bad, because it opens really the discussion and make people change during the discussion. So the people, I want to close just with this image. There was Yuri Lotman, who was a great scholar, saying that when there is a meaningful communication, the problem is not that I I'm giving something to you and you are giving something to me. But we produce a new meaning to the discussion for each of them. This is a meaningful communication. But to have a meaningful communication, you have to accept the fact that you, in places, can have also conflicts. Thank you very much. I stay now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mario. Also, because you allow us to save some time. Well, the dinner or the lunch will not be ready until 1:30, so we still have 15 minutes, maybe to comment a little bit. And then I will ask you to reflect during the lunchtime, to talk about all this a little bit, about the presentations also this morning and yesterday, because we will have a debate, a general debate on everything also this afternoon. I have two questions. I always have questions when I listen to the speakers, because a lot of things comes to my mind, and also to break a little bit the ice. One is about, well, the concept of cultural heritage, as you saw it in the screen, with all these buildings, palace, which becomes part of the public space. And I wonder if, well, I can imagine that there was a strategy behind all this at that period. And I say that because they were made to last 650 years old. Yeah. Here it is. Here it is. But what about now? I mean, we do things that are going to last 10, 20, maybe 30 years. So we are, in some way, obligated to live with our past. But we are not creating, for the future, a new past. Because the things are done not to last, but just with a functional, let's say, a very functional concept. I mean, not everything, of course, there is a few examples. But in general, that is. So how do you see that interaction with present heritage and past heritage? That is maybe my main question, because the other one is a little bit complex. So that was my thought from your presentation. And well, maybe you can start raising your hands, because we have a few minutes left before lunch. But I leave this question on the floor.
It's a very, very good question, because there was a French sociologist saying that we are a society not able to produce ruins. Mm-hmm. It's not very true. You know that today we recognize as cultural heritage even modern buildings or industrial archaeology, for example, the factories, abandoned factories. We have two very good museums in Rome. They are built on a power station of the 30s, and another one was the old factory of beer. So I think the problem is, from one side, we can, as always, reinvent it. The Middle Ages weren't so cautious in preserving cultural heritage. Absolutely not. They destroyed all the Roman temples just to rebuild churches and buildings. So the idea of preserving cultural heritage is a very modern one. The first time is in Renaissance, talking about preserving the past. So not every phase in history was preserving cultural heritage. One. Second question is, so also is a choice. To us is, of course, important. And we have the modern architecture. I'm not saying just the artistic or the, you know, the high-ranking architecture, say, not the Guggenheim Museum, okay? But think about residential housing, no? In the 60s, they built a lot of residential in concrete, no? The new, so they're saying that would be eternal. Mm-hmm. We know today it's not true. Mm-hmm. But the problem, they create a problem of maintenance. Mm-hmm. So with this kind of buildings, often it's preferred to destroy them and rebuild a new, instead of trying to maintain some aspects. You cannot have the chance to have a maintenance of modern buildings. This is the great problem. We have the knowledge about the restoration and maintenance of very ancient buildings, but for the new ones, we are a bit, you know. So the problem probably is accepting this and reinvent the tradition as always. It's always what it is. And this is my idea. So you have to accept this. We have no more techniques to have a good maintenance of this. Mm-hmm. Really.
Yeah, which for me is a pity, because now we are talking about circular economy and social development things.
This is important in this.
And
yes,
before things were done to last and to be used for a long time, and nowadays we are like doing things that are not going to last just a few years.
Absolutely.
So it's a trust of work, intelligence too, and money. So in some way. Okay, do you have any? Yeah, here, Berta.
Thank you. Congratulations again. And well, I have a question for both you, Bart and Mario, about the cultural capital of the European cultural capitals. So my question is about how they are chosen, and if do you think they are playing a role? Because if we ask them which are currently the actual European capitals of culture, I don't know if you know them. Which are? Do you know them? So my question is for you: how are they chosen, and if they really play a role? If they are, what are we doing with that?
They are chosen by a tender, and the tender is shifting per country, and 2 countries can deliver a capital, a European capital of culture, and it's being done as in a competition within the country. So last time Maastricht failed from Leeuwarden, a little town up north, and Maastricht was very eager to get this culture of this capital of culture, because we are already Europe. We signed the treaty, and so you see other forces are working there. It's a fair, open competition based on the tender.
I don't need it. No, yes, of course, but it's not the problem of the program in itself. It depends on the choices cities make. I followed, for example, Ravenna 2019, and it was revealing about the way the city thinks, in a sense. They failed. But they failed not because they weren't able to, but because they tried to run the race on their own, not involving really the territory, not involving really even the
people. They don't involve.
Yes. Was just, you know, like a good moment to try to have a revival of old splendors, at the same time giving a boost to the future, but not relying really on the real forces that were present. Remember, the mind of place is this. It's latent, it's already there, but if you don't use it, so virtually, you have always, in any territory, the forces necessary to improve the lives of cities. The problem is you want to see them and use them. Let them work. So it's not the program itself. You know, I remember good outcomes from many cities. Others no. I also, for example, there are other programs like Olympic Games. I don't know, World Championship and others. They are even with a very strong impact on cities than this. This one is basically, I think, is a positive program because it's based above all not just on infrastructures and buildings, but on giving a chance, for the people living there to feel them European. It's different. It's based on it's different perspectives. The other programs are just, more economic programs using the cities to make, I had also a lot of examples here, man. I had just speculation based on a real estate market. It's very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
In fact, the European Commission, including the European Parliament, is so fond of this program because it was an unexpected success for hardly no money. So the European Commission is giving the name, but if you win the game, there won't be so much money coming from Brussels, hardly nothing. So the cities themselves have to raise the money to finance their own party.
Yeah.
And to be recognized by the jury, most cities rely on artists. They make a program with the artistic community, social community, and so on. And at the very moment the city is chosen, then city councils say goodbye to this artist and take it in their own hands for marketing and political reasons. That is how it mainly goes. An excellent example is Istanbul. Istanbul had an enormous, diverse involvement of the citizens, but at the very moment they got the title, the city council took over. And I will be in a conference about it. Every 2 months there's a conference about it, and people ask recipes. There are no recipes. The only denominator is that the first director the city council is appointing will have a shorter life than the period which is needed to present the cultural capital activity. And in some cities, like Rotterdam, and other cities, like Wrocław last time, they swallow 3, 4, 5 directors because the politicians always want to have something else in most cases. It doesn't mean that it is not excellent or fine or something, but forget about the democracy component and the citizenship component. It's a very sophisticated city marketing project through culture, which is fine. So a lot of artists will earn money, and cultural institutions gain by it. But in that sense, it's very strange, exceptional, exception of the culture programs of the European Union.
May I add maybe that there is very different cases depending on the city and the management of the cities, because there was some very good cases where the cities that were European Capital of Culture really managed that in the way that after the nomination and during many years after that, the city became a real culture capital. This is not the case always, unfortunately. And what I noticed in the last years is that there is a lack of attention to European capitals of cultures. As you say, no one knew that it was this year Leuven and La Valletta, and next year the cities are decided with a few years in advance, and we know which country is able to apply every year. I know that, for instance, for Spain, we have to wait until 2030, 31. And I was the other day talking with the people from Granada who wants to present the application, but for 2031. And but it's true that in the last years, at least in the last 5 years, it decreased. And it was a pity because there was a big success around this concept, as Erasmus was. As you say, no one expected that success from Erasmus. No one expected that success from European Capital of Culture. But I was listening to Tiedeman's words before, and he was saying, no, we have to support culture and diversity, and that is the good, but they are still words. It lacks action and real commitment for that. Sorry for that, but I was fighting for European Capital of Culture of Cáceres here, and I know a little bit about that. Okay, it's 2 minutes left. I think we can get it because I don't see more hands up. So let's go for lunch, but before we give a big clap again to Mario.
Thank you very much.